van Dijk and I'm at USB Leaders Angle today. My talk covered overcoming adversity and it basically trails my life and how I achieved success. Following this would be an edited version of my presentation. They say a photo can tell 1,000 stories, and that specific photo to me kind of wraps around what has been and is still a very long career in sport. That was in 2004 when I won the Boston Marathon in a world record time of 1 hour 18 minutes for 42K, and I became the first wheelchair racer to do that. And eventually I went on to win 9 titles, but there was a lot that happened before and there was a lot that happened after. And I'm going to share some of that with you today. I think it always has to start somewhere. I was born in 1973 in a little town called Ceres, as Johan pointed out. And as you would know, as most small towns, they probably had, in those days, they probably only had one big doctor. And the doctor that delivered me took one look at me, and he went back to my parents, who were farmers, and he said, this is the most disabled child he has ever delivered, and they should consider putting me in an institution and moving on. Fortunately for me, my parents didn't take the doctor too serious. They took me home, and later two brothers came along and they raised me as one of the boys. So my parents had to take the tough choice. They had to send me away to a special school, and they were living in a small town called Beaufort West then, and I had to go to school in Kimberley. So I got to the school, and there was a few kids in wheelchairs, but most had disabilities that you couldn't even see. My best friend had dyslexia, and you know, we just enjoyed life. I was able to do sport. By the time I was 15, I had provincial colours in 5 different sports, and I received my senior national colours in swimming back then. And then it ended. School was over. I finished matric, and I just started doing wheelchair racing. And I decided, you know, I want to do marathons, I want to do endurance sport. I could see something was puzzling my dad, and he looked at me and he said, you know, you just finished matric, you're going to go to Stellenbosch University to study now to be something. What is it with this new sport? And I said, you know, Dad, while I was at school, I saw all these magazines coming from America about wheelchair racing, and I saw the guys doing races, and they were making $10,000. Now back then, it was about R3.50 to the dollar, which was still a lot of money in my mind. And my dad just looked at me and he said, you know what, do what you want to do as long as you pass. Anyway, so I went to Stellenbosch University, and 2 weeks later, my dad passed away. He had a heart attack. And that became my promise to my dad, to be the best in the world. It brings me to the next word I'm going to talk about, which is change. When I think about change, to me, one day it's going to be about looking back and seeing how well did I adapt to change. While I was there, I had 2 parallels running. I had my sport and I had my education. We have to have our education. And initially, because I was so interested in technology and I was scientific, I wanted to study engineering. And I took all the right subjects at school, I made the right grades, and then I started looking for a bursary. And I started going to all the mines because this was the direction I was going to want to study in. And every single time the response came back, we can't give you a bursary because we don't think you're going to be able to move in our mining sites. They can't do that today anymore, they could back then. And then I had to figure out, what am I going to study now? Because I can't get a bursary. And so for my first year, I decided on BCom. In my first year of BCom, I realized BCom is not going to help me become the best in the world. So I went to the Dean of Sports Science, and I said to him, I really need to study your course. And he said, but you can't do all the sports. And this is a practical course. I said, well, I'll make you a deal. After a lot of negotiation, whatever I can't do, you can give me a 0 for, because it was a 50-50 between theory and practical. First day practical, I realized that, you know, although you guys got 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 eyes and 2 ears, you can't do all the sports either. It's one of those things. On the other side, I had the sport thing going. And in '92, we got back into the international sporting arena. I was selected to go to the Barcelona Paralympic Games. So what happened at the Paralympics was the government said, okay, all the venues are free for the Spanish people to come watch. And every day we had packed venues. If you think 40,000 people, is a lot of people. Try competing in front of 90,000 people. It is a complete mind-blowing experience. I went to Australia that year, did a 5K race. I finished, I think, 5th, and this German company came to me. I hope there's no Germans here today. And said, we want to sponsor you. Now, when you're 19 years old and somebody comes to you and they say, we want to sponsor you, you just see dollar signs. You just sign. For the next 3 years of the 4-year contract, I carried a lot of water bottles, I pumped a lot of tires, and I pushed a lot of guys off the road. Because in a team context, if there's 8 of us, somebody needs to win, and the other guys work for that one leader to win. The fortunate thing is the leader is always the strongest guy in the team. And the last year of that contract, I was the team leader, and I won a couple of races. And I came back, and a couple of weeks later I received a fax, we didn't have email back then, from Germany, saying that because I didn't perform well enough, they were cancelling my sponsorship. I once asked one of my crowds who's ever been fired, and I won't do that to you guys because nobody then put up their hands, and I don't expect anybody to put up your hands. But to me that felt like I was fired. My contract was cancelled, no more sponsors, and I felt worthless. I literally went, I took my racing wheelchair, I put it in my cupboard in my race room, and I didn't train for around 9 months. I had one setback. Something went wrong, and I gave up on that promise to my dad to become the best in the world. So I started training again, and I started working hard, and eventually I went to World Champs a couple of months later, and I won a gold medal and signed a sponsor that I'm still with today. We need to figure out how we deal with setbacks, and the way it makes sense to me is because I'm in sport and in fitness. How do you train a muscle? You take a muscle into the gym, you work it hard, you break it down, the next day or 2 days later it's sore as hell. But then it grows back stronger. And I see that setbacks is like life's gym for us. How do we get stronger? Life needs to knock you down so you can stand up. We live in interesting times. I mean, you're always measured. What car are you driving? Which suburb do you live? Initially I thought success is related to the amount of sponsors you had. 2001 I lined up for the Boston Marathon for the first time. And what you have to understand about how they do these road races, the wheelchair division goes off first. 5 minutes later the runners come. We took off and this camera was with us, and we always get about 5 minutes of coverage because then they go to the runners. And as we started, this dense cloud of fog moved in behind us and it covered the runners. So they couldn't broadcast the running race. So for the next 45 minutes to an hour, they had to broadcast the wheelchair race worldwide. And I decided to break away early in the race, and I built up a serious lead. So it was just me on TV worldwide for an hour. It made all the front pages of the English papers. The English papers just said, our champion. And I was still living in Stellenbosch now. There's a little hill just outside of Kaimani that I train on. And this truck, or this bakkie full of construction workers passed me. And I knew they were going to shout something at me. They always do. And then the oldest guy looked at me, and he elbowed the guy next to him, and he just said, there goes our champion. At that moment, I felt like I was successful. A lot of people think, we just show up for a race and we start and we finish and then it's done. There's an amazing amount of detail that goes into preparing for a race, for a season, and managing myself. One of the secrets to my success is that I've approached this as you would approach a business. Most startup companies today, 5 years, they're gone. I've been doing this for 20 years. You have the what. What am I offering? You have the to whom. Who are my customers? How do I get to them? Get the how. What is my infrastructure? How much does it cost me? So you have cost, revenue, profit. What is profit to me? Profit to me is success. If I'm not finishing in the top 3, I'm not making any money. What am I selling? I'm selling a reality. I'm the winner of international sports events. Sport is filled with emotion. Sport is unpredictable. I'm selling an image. I'd like to think that I'm a model sportsman. What are the challenges that I'm facing in selling this product? When I say to you, close your eyes, and I say to you, wheelchair, what do you think of? You don't think of a sexy piece of high-tech equipment. You think of a wheelchair, like you see in a hospital. It represents limited mobility, it represents an injury, it represents pain and discomfort. It's not something that you associate with success, sport. What must I do to outperform my competitors in other industries? You know, there's a lot of disabled sportsmen today who are successful. These are the challenges that I have to face and deal with, and I'm sure you have to do it in your own business. The media, it's an absolutely free distribution channel. How do I manage this relationship? Well, everybody is now on Twitter. Some people are still on Facebook. You have to use that. Personal presentations like I'm doing with you today. Hopefully one or two of you will invite me to come talk to your staff one day. That's the way I get to you. It's got to cost something, and that infrastructure, you know, I've got core resources, I've got core activities, and I've got networks. What are my resources? Events. As a sports scientist, I have to make sure I keep up to date with the latest training techniques, the latest supplements, the latest recovery techniques, and I have to keep on evolving that knowledge. I have to keep on training myself. Finance, these things cost money. It costs money to travel, it costs money to train, it costs money to recover. Capacity, you guys have to, you know, we live in such busy times, you have a family, you have kids, time becomes critical. Balance, why is balance so important to me? So often in life, you know, you're working so hard and you've got this one goal and you zone in on it and you keep on working and you feel all these things bothering you and these hands holding you back. It's disturbing, it's disrupting, and you free yourself from this and you work so hard and you become so isolated. And then you get to the top and you achieve success or you fail. And then you realize, you know, all these things that were bothering you, these were actually your family and your friends trying to support you. And all of you would know that, you know, it sucks to celebrate alone. And it's even worse to cry alone. So that's why balance is important to me. I'm happily married, we've got 2 kids, I have my sports, I run my own company called Enable Sport. We distribute custom-made sports equipment for the disabled worldwide. I have a hobby. Who still has a hobby? See, the older guys still have hobbies. Wisdom. I keep koi fish. And we have to understand balance will go out of whack. There will be a deadline that you have to meet. There will be a period where you have to sacrifice and work harder. But it's always important that just bring it back eventually. Get that balance right again. If you can take these 3 things that I'm going to share with you home today, I would have seen my mission here as a success. The first one is, yes, people tell you to have goals. And then later, you know, they come and they say you have to have process goals. These are goals to achieve. It just gets very complicated. Find your purpose in life. Why are you here? What are you going to do with the odd 80 years that you have here? I always thought my purpose or my goal was to win races and be a successful sportsman. We spoke about setbacks, and things go wrong in life. You get knocked down, and if you take a ball and you throw it at the ground, it bounces back up to you. And the harder you throw it, the faster it bounces up. And I just taught myself, the harder life throws me, the faster I will bounce back. You know, so often in life, we especially as South Africans, we like to postpone. We like to think, you know, tomorrow's the day. Tomorrow I'm going to start going to gym. Tomorrow I'm going to call that brother I haven't spoken to, that I'm still angry at, and make peace, or I'm going to call my gran. We always think tomorrow's the next day. And I'm going to close off with this. There's an old saying in Africa, and it goes, darkness comes too soon for the hunter. It's later than you think it is. Thank you.